Hey, welcome back. This is the Friday Fun Show, and we're going to have fun by answering your questions. And if you'd like for Julie and I to submit, or if you'd like to submit any questions to Julie and I, the best way to do it is over on Instagram, and we're, of course, at Tim and Julie Harris. And this is our Friday show. So if this is the first one of our podcasts you've listened to, please do know that our normal podcasts are very buttoned down. We're following scripts and outlines and all the rest of it. But on Friday, we do Freeform Friday, Fun Friday. We've never actually thought of a name for this show. But in past podcasts on Friday, we've talked about health, we've talked about wealth, we've talked about, oh, I don't know, maybe interstellar aliens, all kinds of different things.
Sometimes
So,
we call it
Julie,
Ask Me Anything, which is kind of like today.
yeah, exactly. Well, so today what we did is Julie and I went through our questions, and we have a lot of you guys that submit us questions every week. Coaching clients, obviously, YouTube folks, podcast listeners, folks from our EXP Realty group send us questions. And a lot of times the questions are all kind of falling into the same category, especially this time of year. And a lot of the questions have to do with essentially lead generation, have to do with organization, I think, and motivation. But what we're gonna focus on those things. I wrote down one, two, three, five questions. But what we're gonna do in addition to that is we're gonna pull out. We've pulled out the questions from some of our top producing, very successful agents. So we're not just focusing on how to get started type things. We're gonna focus on what to do after you've actually been successful for a long period of time, and yeah, what's next? Okay, so we're gonna start out with some basic questions, and we're going to get to the good ones. And remember, if you want to submit questions, just submit them over at on Instagram, direct message us, Tim and Julie Harris, and you'll find us easily. And we always are posting pictures and whatnots over there. And yeah, that'd be great. And give us a follow, and we'll follow you back. All right, so. Julie, the first question we had, and we always get this one. We get this one in a million different ways, a million different times per day, practically, is the best way to generate. Now, this is what they asked. This isn't what I would have suggested they asked, but
Sure.
the best way to generate buyer leads without having to pay a buyer referral, without having to buy the leads from Zillow, without having to basically sell your soul to the referral fee, whatever it is. How do they generate a buyer lead for free or buyer leads and not have to pay any ridiculous fees?
Okay, good question. I have maybe three different answers, and I would recommend doing all three, not just choosing one. One, I love open houses done right. You have the right listing. We've done podcasts. What's the right listing? What's the best listing? Because not every open house will pull leads like you want. And some of you listening, or in this case, watching our Zoom, now that we're doing Zooms, some of you guys have tried open houses and they haven't been great. And then you just don't feel like doing them anymore. So if that's you, you either had the wrong house, you didn't, promote it as well as you could have. We recommend at least 10 directional signs, things like that. So open houses done right in a systematic format where you're using scripts, you're door knocking the neighborhood before, et cetera, et cetera. So open houses would be one. I had a great call with one of my coaching clients today about how to utilize any listing, well, not maybe any listing, but listings that are especially in popular neighborhoods, popular school districts, by doing what we call lovingly hot rodding your real estate sign. So home brochures, 1-800-HOME hotline, different reasons for them to call, even if maybe they don't like the look of that house, but they love the neighborhood. So sign calls, home brochures, open houses. And then maybe a distant third would be just making sure that you're always talking about real estate with your forward script, your friends, your family, your center of influence, because a lot of both buyer and seller leads come just organically by just being out in the wild talking about real estate.
I love all your 3 year points, and I'm going to add one. The best way to generate, and you're going to be embarrassed that you didn't think of this one yourself, my dear. The best way to generate an unbelievably good, powerful, the best quality buyer lead in the world is to take a listing where the seller has to buy.
Well, okay, fair enough. That is a
Well,
good way
but
to generate a buyer. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Well, back to your original point, though, the open house system, listeners that and viewers now, that's also part of obviously Premier Coaching. We've done a lot of podcasts. Julie and I have probably at this point 7,000 podcasts that we've done. Only iTunes only allows us to upload 2,000. But yeah, tons and tons of podcasts. All you've got to do is search out. You can go to our main website, timandjulieharris.com. Yeah, and find the open house plan. We don't give we give as best of overview of the open house plan as we can on the podcast. We only have you guys for a half hour. But those of you who are in Premier Coaching, make sure you're using the whole entire plan. depending on your market, Julie said it perfectly. You can essentially do all of your lead generation from just doing open houses. And I want to give a special nod to those of you who are doing just that, because the agents out there that are doing their open houses in the right neighborhoods with the right houses, and again, that's all part of what we teach you in Premier Coaching. They're generating a ton of listing leads, because if you're doing, for example, an open house in a neighborhood where it's going to have a lot of the folks that are moving to that neighborhood are moving up from something that's less expensive, what are you going to get? You're going to get maybe selling, they're going to want to buy that particular house, and maybe it's your listing that you're holding open, but you're also going to get an opportunity at the listing lead. So an open house is a great way, the best way perhaps, to do true branding and marketing inside of a community if you follow our open house plan. We want you to do a neighbors only open house. Julie mentioned signs. We want you to door knock and invite the neighbors, get to know everyone, really work it. And when you do, guys, think about it. You know, can you imagine another business? Like, what is the value of having a sign, let alone a bunch of signs, in a community with your name on them? What's the value of that? What would, I don't know, Google or, Apple pay to be able to take out little mini billboards in the front of residential listings, millions, if not billions of dollars per year, because that's direct marketing in a community that's exactly, you guys get the gist of it. We're the only industry that is allowed legally, not everywhere, but most places, to have exactly what I just said. You get many billboards, and you follow our open house system. One of the things we're going to want you to do is have obviously an open house sign, but it's not just some crappy corrugated thing. It's going to have Tim and Julie Harris tour of homes, or open house with your name on it. And you're going to have a sign, you're going to put it in front of that one, and then you got to put up a bunch of directional signs with arrows with also your name on them. Your name is your brand, pointing in the direction of the open house. And you do this consistently, especially in a neighborhood where you want to start taking more listings and become dominant. Man, the other agents are going to just not even know what hit them, because they're not going to be able to outwork you because you're following the plan. So definitely do that.
And by the way, some of them listening are like, well, I just sold my last listing. I don't have anything to hold open. It doesn't even have to be your own listing. Start with your brokerage just to make your signage consistent. But even then, it just has to be in the state you're licensed. You can hold anything open. You could go to builders and hold their models open. They don't always have complete coverage of every single model. I know one of our coaching clients recently worked out a deal with KB Homes where she gets to go to their newest community where they hadn't even hired a salesperson yet, but they do have the model built. And they said, you know what, we're going to pay you for anything that you sell of our inventory. She doesn't have to be an employee of the builder. She's just working their open houses. And when she gets somebody that wants to build with them, she uses their contract. Anybody who doesn't build with them, she can take them to other new construction or sell them a resale. So there's many different ways. So and I'm kind of wandering into the type of thing we do in coaching versus what we can do on a podcast, because we have other questions.
Well, but Julie, it's also funny. What you realize, or what you may not realize that we just did. We are answering the question how to generate a buyer lead, but what we really just snuck in how they can generate listing leads.
Well, naturally.
Yeah, naturally, exactly. That's how we're wired. All right,
That's
the
right.
next question, and Julie, this was one that actually you received.
Mhm.
I thought this was a really good one. So this was, if I remember correctly, you messaged maybe this one to me 2 weeks ago. It was from an agent who is making over $1 million per year, no debt, no mortgage payment. It was a gal, if I remember correctly, and she was in her mid 50s. She basically had enough, all the boxes were checked financially, family, all the things. And yet she was finding herself lacking motivation. And you and I talked about that, like when it actually motivated us to do some more podcasts about that type of thing. But the question I had for you, and then let's work on this together, is how to think bigger. So whether you're a top producing agent or whether you're a brand new agent, what would be like 3 ways that someone could trigger their mind and their spirit to start thinking and then ultimately acting bigger?
That's a great question. Well, so I think there's levels to this as you're an up and coming producer. And, we had a podcast series talking about the levels of wealth. So the first thing is just, having consistent income. That's where most people go to their first goal setting. Then they figure that out. Then after a few years of that, they're paying debt off. Maybe they pay their house off. They don't have leases on cars anymore. Whatever the version is, as you said, ticking all the boxes, right? Then that becomes a consistent habit. And that's a great habit to have, right? It's kind of like first world problems. Now you've figured out how to have consistent income. But once you've paid things off And maybe you even paid for a kid to go to college. You've done all of those things and you're happy with the house that you have and you're happy with the cars that you're driving. How do you think bigger? So one of the things that I do kind of bridging that is just a couple of questions. What do you want more of? What do you want less of? And usually at that level, and I'd be interested to hear what your take on it is. Usually what I hear is things, it's almost never even more money. It's more time. Sometimes it's more freedom. It's kind of intertwined. Some agents go years of like that and they still don't like have a cleaning lady. So they want more time. Well, stop cleaning your own house. That would be one thing. They want more time. I've had agents that are cranking, you know, $1 million plus GCI and they are still their own transaction coordinator. So if you want more time, what are the things that you're spending your time on that really maybe you don't have to do that anymore? So that would be one level, but I'll toss it back to you because you've certainly had lots of coaching clients like that. And some of our coaches have been in that situation too.
Sure, of course. Well, you got to the essence of it. It's like, you know, everyone says, well, not everyone, but, you know, what's your big why? And everyone comes up with these complicated, you know, ridiculous flow charts of their big why. But the real big why is, for most people, if you really get down to the essence of it, and Julie said it, is you want freedom. So what does freedom mean? Freedom means freedom from the things that burden you as a result of having to earn a living, right? So
Yes.
freedom from having to have a schedule, not all the time, but most days. Freedom from having to deal with people, freedom from having to do what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it at the highest level with people you'd rather not do it with, right? Freedom of being able to control your time. Freedom from worrying about money. How would you like to wake up in the morning and for the rest of your life, knowing that all your financial needs will be met forever, and then probably those of your you know, your family, whoever you decide when you're off to the big, you know, real estate listing appointment in the sky, right? Freedom, maybe even for them as well. So you have to really get to the essence of what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And the thing that's fascinating is that you don't need $1 bazillion to have that sense of freedom, depending on the lifestyle that you have. If you live in Murphy, North Carolina, you could probably have all kinds of sense of freedom for, you know, $3,000 to $5,000 a month. If you live in a big expensive area, Miami, Coral Gables, you know, all these other areas, your freedom number is probably 50,000 passive per month. But really get to the essence of it, because really when it goes to thinking bigger, it's not always about, to Julie's point, especially after you've, you know, at a certain age, buying more stuff, having a bigger house, having just stuff in general, it has a diminishing return on it that is palatable. The first time you have, you know, first time you know, I don't know, flew first class, let's say, it was like, whoa, look at me. But then after you've done it a few times, it's like, you kind of get used to it. It's amazing how fast humans adapt to change of environment, both good and bad. And so if you have had enough of those experiences and you're realizing there's diminishing returns with having another fancy purse or buying another fancy car or all the rest of it, then maybe this is a really good time for you to really get in connection with what you truly want, which is more control of your time and more time. Now, where it goes after that is, well, what the hell am I going to do with all my time? Worry about that after you've created it, because nature abhors a vacuum, and you will figure out some way to fill that vacuum with something that's going to be, maybe you're not even consciously aware you want to have the experience. Maybe you want to learn how to be a chef, or maybe you just want to, you know, spend more time with your dog. It doesn't really matter. You want to go spend more time fishing, spend more time with your family or your friends. But you won't know really what your heart desires until you're no longer burdened with the things that, if you're at this point where you have accomplished a lot financially, if you don't allow yourself the freedom to unburden yourself from those things, because they're habitual. I mean, Julie and I are certainly guilty of this. They're habitual. If you've worked your ass off for a long period of time, working your ass off becomes who you are. That becomes your personality. Like, you know, describe Julie, you know, Harris. She works her ass off. Well, she does. She works her ass off at the gym, works her ass on coaching calls and our businesses, all the rest of it. Well, what if all of a sudden Julie decided, because she could, that she doesn't necessarily, well, you did. I mean, when Zoe was born, you decided to basically retire and you decided to go back to, you know, yeah. I mean, so point of it is really get in connection with what you truly want. And probably what you truly want is control of your time. And you want more, that sense of inner peace that only comes from giving yourself the gift of, you know, being financially free, and then being psychologically free of having to worry about the finances. All right,
So
Julie,
that
next
you
one.
can do what
Go
you
ahead.
want to do, when you want to do it, with whom you want to do it, and you have that freedom. And I agree with you because I think agents, especially because this is a very common issue with my top producing private clients, is that they are that grinder. They have been working their asses off. They know, they've got a pretty predictable mousetrap, but it's very habitual, right? So if you don't know what you're going to do with that time, I always recommend go on a big trip, travel, break the habit, as you said, the
Well,
habitual grind.
you're stepping on
Break
my
the
next
habit.
question.
Sorry,
Julie
go
doesn't,
ahead.
we don't, I have the
I don't have
questions.
them in front of me. So.
Julie doesn't have the script today of the questions, you could tell, but it's good. You're doing great.
Meanwhile, back to you.
Meanwhile, back to me. All right. So the next question is perfect because you were just already talking about it. How to avoid becoming bored and becoming complacent, right? It's exactly what you were just saying. So you don't have to, like, that can happen at any stage in your real estate career. But I'm going to start out by warning you of something. Don't be someone that that is overly reliant on the novel or the shiny object, and be okay with being bored. We have an 11-year-old daughter, Zoe, and I'm thrilled that she hasn't popped in on me yet. And she hates being bored. She always wants to be distracted. It hasn't been that long, maybe what, 20 years, that the kids were habitually on devices. And so there's magic that only happens when a human is bored, right? And so Zoe doesn't have her devices during the week. Completely no devices during the week. She's allowed to have them on the weekend for a certain amount of time. And the things that her little mind creates when she's not on her devices, they're magical. And they're so funny and they're so creative. And the best part of Zoe comes out when she's allowed to be when she's not on her devices, because the devices suck up her energy and her creativity. And then when she's back on her devices, her personality changes. She's grumpy, she's grouchy, she's just,
Overstimulated, basically, I think.
well, Jules, I know that that's the go-to answer, overstimulated, but I don't think that's what it is. I think it's because she desires to express herself creatively, because look how she just pours out of her when she's not on her devices. And when she's on her devices, all those devices take up all of her energy that would have been used
Bandwidth.
otherwise for being
Yeah.
creative. Yeah. I mean, that's my theory anyway. But as far as like back to business, right?
Mhm.
The best businesses are boring businesses. Julie and I always, say we want our business to be like the post office, but this was back before the post office became maybe a business that wasn't so boring. That was kind of a
Right.
joke, but I'll stop there. As far as you want a business that is boring and duplicatable, and then you want to be okay understanding that everything you want in life, all the most meaningful, most magical things you want in life, are going to take usually, and this is the sucky part, so I apologize for being honest with you guys about this. It's going to take like 10 times longer than you think it should, or 10 times longer than social media told you that it should, right? If you want the sense of, if you want all the things that you all want, you have to be prepared to put in the time, and it's going to take a lot longer than what popular society is going to tell you. Repetitious, this is one of the greatest sayings ever. I don't know who said it, but repetitious boredom pays off. I'm going to say it again, and then Julie, I want you to vamp on it, okay? Repetitious boredom pays off.
Yes, and we used to have that posted on one of our whiteboards in our real estate office. I was talking to a coaching client today that was referring to it as the salt mine. We used to also call it the salt mine. You're in there and you're digging salt all day. You're doing the grind, but it's that repetitious boredom. And sometimes we talk about boredom in a real estate practice. In case you are confused about this, ask yourself on your next pending, would you like it to be super exciting all the time, or do you want it to be a boring pending that just closes, right? You want a predictable, duplicatable business that you have systematized the stress out of as best you can. Now, there's going to be things that happen, of course. But I think repetitious boredom pays off means that you keep on doing it, and it's that accumulation effect, right? And you're going to have days where it's like work, work, work. Where are my results? Work, work, work. Where are my results? Seems like I'm just banging my head into the wall. Nobody seems to want to move right now. And then there's going to be other days where it's the first call you make, and they're like, "I'm so glad you called. Yeah, come over. Let's talk about what my house is worth." And you're like, "Where were you yesterday?" But you're not going to get that call unless you did the other calls, right? you have to, I call it stick-to-itiveness. It's like you have to be intuitive that what you're doing is going to pay off, but you also have to stick to it and not give up. That's not to say you shouldn't take days off and refill the cup. Of course you should. You know, everybody should do that. Sometimes my coaching homework for our coaching clients is take a 3-day weekend, because I am your coach and I hear that you're burned out. You've hit the wall. You're ineffective with what you're doing. So go refill the cup and come back and be a better agent that's ready to rumble and help people. So that, to me, that's what repetitious boredom pays off means.
No, I agree. And but it's true at the gym. It's true. It's like doing it's doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it at the highest level. And the next question,
Repetitively, not just
the ne-
once.
no, exactly. For long, long ass periods of time. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that's the hardest. Like, we didn't know that when we got married 34 years ago. We didn't know that when we started all of our businesses. But as we've gotten older, we know to expect it. And it's almost, there's something like, you know, age takes away a lot, but age also gives you more wisdom. And one of the little bits of wisdom is that God has a plan for when things are supposed to happen. And you just have to be patiently putting in the effort before you're going to get the reward
Yeah.
of what it is that's in store for you.
You have to show up for it to happen.
Yeah, consistently for long periods of time.
I know. I used
Um,
to hate when we felt that way and we'd go to like Howard Brinton seminars, and I'll never forget. I had a similar question to that to one of the stars that I was looking up to, and I was so mad because they said, "Well, you just have to do your time," and I'm like, "The hell kind of answer is that? You just have to do your time." But really, what they should have said is repetitious boredom pays off, and that if you keep it up and you keep on honing your skills and you keep going after it and getting better and better on every appointment, that it will pay off. But they just said, "Just have to do your time." Hated that.
y- yeah,
It's true
well, me
though.
too. All right, so the next question, and we've had this one a number of times. This is always there's books and books and movies and all kinds of things written about motivational speeches, but how to feel motivated every day. And I'm gonna start out by talking about that. The fallacy in that word is the word feel. And I'm gonna tell you why. Because a feeling is not something you can build a future around, because feelings come and go. During this time together with all of you guys, right now, I've gone from feeling all kinds of different ways, and probably so have you. A lot of you listen to us while you're driving, while you're, working out. I bet you your emotions too have changed constantly. Your emotions are like a constant, stream of energy, ebbs and flows, ups and downs, depends on your hormones, depends on, did you just see something that you like, something you disliked? Did you smell something funny? I mean, all these things, right? Your conscious and your subconscious mind are constantly making your feelings feel very, very up and down and left and
Good.
right and the
Yeah.
whole thing. And that's true even if you're more of a stoic personality type, more of an introvert. You're still feeling a bunch of different things. Why am I telling you this? Because if your outcome in life is dependent on how you feel, you're screwed, because you're not going to ever feel like doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it at the highest level, ever. You're
Ever.
never, matter of fact, that saying that Julie and I came up with all those years ago is the antithesis of all these, and what motivated us to do it, frankly, were all these, self-help guru types were saying these, give really garbage advice, like follow your passion, the money will follow. I mean, it takes a 3-year-old to figure out the fallacy in that little concept, right? I mean, what if you're, I mean, just think about it, guys. Follow your passion, and the money will follow. That's great, but what if it should be choose a passion that people are willing to pay for, and then the money will follow, and become really, really good at it. Be worthy of having people want to do business with you, and the money will follow. But that, of course, doesn't sound as good. And then it starts to sound more like, if you want ever increasing levels of success in your business and personal life, do what you don't want to do, and you don't want to do it at the highest level. That definitely doesn't sound as good as follow your passion and the money will follow, right? So I'm going to start out by saying, if you want to feel motivated every day, stop waiting for you to feel motivated to do what you don't want to do. That's absolutely true. And then your life, a successful life, as a real estate professional or any kind of professional, well, I mean, this applies to personal aspects as well. It really does come down to 3 to 5 things every single day. And the minimum standards, this is what I'm talking about. So minimum standards for it, like, again, let's not worry about whether you feel something. Let's just worry about what you do, because the actions that you take are ultimately what's going to determine your future, not whether you felt good 5 minutes ago, or whether, because if you only feel like, if you have to feel a certain way to say, for example, call for sale by owner, I don't know about y'all, but I've really never felt like calling for sale by owner. And I did
Nobody
thousands.
has ever.
And I've done thousands of calls to for sale by owners. I never once, I mean, I hated calling centers of influence and past clients. Julie was awesome at it, but I hated it. But I still did it.
Yeah.
So if I'm
Because you weren't leading
around,
with emotion, you were leading with action.
exactly. And I forced myself to do it. I did what I didn't want to do, and I didn't want to do it at the highest level. And that's one of the things that we certainly are teaching Zoe, but I wish all of us would have known that when we were a lot younger. But instead, we were essentially manipulated in a lot of ways and in very, very grotesque ego, just bad way by all these self-help types that are giving. And to this day, like we have coaching clients that will show up in Premier Coaching, show up on the podcast, and they'll say, I got started in real estate and it was my passion, but then I lost my passion for real estate. And it's like, okay, so you think you can only be successful at something when you're feeling in a very heightened state of emotional, experience of passion. Passion's like way the hell up there on the spectrum of, high level emotions. And they're like, well, yeah. And then, well, I mean, how frequently in a year, let alone 10 years, do you actually feel passionate about anything at that level? Well, hardly ever. And I'm waiting to feel that way. When I do, I know I'm going to have found my thing and all the success I've ever wanted is going to follow. It doesn't work like that. I mean, Julie, I can talk about this forever.
Well, I mean, I don't have any examples of things that are worth doing, being, seeing, having, experiencing that didn't take some work behind them. I mean, I remember playing in orchestras, like you don't just show up and play like that. You have to practice. You have to learn your scales. You have to know how to read music. You have to know how to follow the conductor. You know how to, and there were lots of times where I was like, oh my gosh, I totally, especially like little known fact, and I wasn't a professional musician, I was a good amateur, but even so, guess what? There's concerts where you got to play stuff you don't ever even want to play. You don't even
Julie,
like.
I'm going to ask you a question because
Yeah.
you've corrected me when I call you a professional musician before. So if you were in a professional, so you were part of you got
I didn't
paid.
do it as a job.
Okay, but you did do it as a job because you got paid to play. Yes or no?
Sometimes, yes.
Okay, you got paid to play, and you had to join in order to get paid to play and to join the orchestras and play on the things, the soundtracks and stuff you did. You actually belong and to the perform. What was it? The union you had to join or whatever it was.
I'd say that's one of the differences. If you're a professional, like you're a contract orchestral player, then you're joining the union and you have a contract. Because I was subbing most of the time, I was more of an independent contractor. I mean, you brought it up. Nobody cares.
No, they do. But
Yeah.
I'm just curious to me. It's because you're such a humble soul that you don't want to consider yourself
Well,
having been a professional musician. But
yeah.
my dear, you were. Like,
Okay.
if you got it, when do you become a professional coach, a professional real estate coach? What's the one criteria to actually be a real estate coach?
One criteria, I
Well,
mean,
what's the ultimate litmus
you have
test
to
as to
be
whether or
paid
not? Yeah, exactly. You have to get paid, right?
more than
You're not a
once,
real
more
estate
than one person.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You're not a real estate practitioner until you've actually, practiced, till you gotten paid.
Yeah. Well,
Right.
but back to the point I was trying to make is that you can take many different instances. You don't watch, the Olympics and that person like yesterday had the thought that, hey, I'm gonna be in the Olympics tomorrow. No, they've got lots of countless hundreds of thousands of hours working on whatever it is that they're great at. A great chef didn't just like go to the sale aisle yesterday at the grocery store and throw some crap together and become a great chef. They studied it. There's a lot of repetitious boredom in becoming great at anything. And to
So the
try and
next,
have an easy button, I think just frustrates people. But I agree with you that a lot of social media makes it look like, all you have to do is these 5 types of videos and throw that up there and you're going to be an overnight success. And I
well, I
think that
mean,
works against people.
I don't know if you're meaning to get me on my soapbox, but I'm going to try to avoid it. But that is actually, it is kind of, it is strange to me that there's a whole segment of the, let's call it real estate education space that is trying to convince agents that
Mhm.
they can use marketing and advertising to fool their buying and selling, home buying and selling
Skip
market
a step. Mhm.
into thinking they're successful before they've actually been successful. And I don't know
Yeah.
if you guys have realized that, but the word that you really want to accomplish is reputation. So it was Charlie Munger. that said, don't try to make your, don't try to be famous. Don't try to be famous yourself. Try to make your work famous, or as it
Mhm.
pertains to real estate, try to make the result you get for other people famous. So you're not like, imagine a famous, like a great surgeon, let's say. The great surgeon is famous. He's an Instagram celebrity. He's da, 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 da. Are you going to hire that guy? Are you going to hire the guy that basically you don't even know anything about him? He's not trying to build his personal brand, but you know he's a kick-ass surgeon. You're going to hire the guy that's a kick-ass surgeon. He has no Instagram. You guys getting what I'm saying here?
Especially, excuse me, especially if it's backed by, all these people that swear that, no, I mean, he saved my life. I wouldn't be alive if it wasn't without the surgeon. That's what reputation is, backed by experience. And the thing that's difficult about that is that you gain experience by one experience at a time. And if you try and supplant that by, being more of an influencer and less of a reputation, and try and skip that, the problem is that that doesn't really last, because even if you did get a call from that, if you don't have the experience, the
They
skills,
can
the
smell
to
you.
back it up,
Yep.
you're not going to last long doing that.
Well,
Your channel might last longer than you do, but you're going to go do something else, because people that actually need what you do for a living do ask good questions, and they are very serious about hiring a professional, and you can't fake that. I
well,
mean,
you and I have been in the
it's
coaching and training space for over 2 decades, and
Mhm.
we've seen the marketing and the branding stuff come and it goes. And we haven't gone back by more than maybe 10 years at this point. But one of the things that Julie and I track are we're trying to see if there's a correlation between the major trends in real estate, and like the marketing and branding thing started in the 90s, and so did the teams thing. And then it comes and it goes and it comes and it goes. We have a theory and we're trying to validate it, or prove ourselves right or wrong, really test it, that the percent, like right last year there were 71% of all members of the National Association of Realtors didn't sell a house. 71%. And yet marketing and branding and all these things that agents are being told to sort of shortcut the earning of the reputation is at a fevered pitch. Everywhere you go, everybody and their brother is telling you to do social media marketing and branding, social media marketing and branding. Now, why are they telling you that? And I'm going to tell you this from an owner of a company that sells stuff to agents, right? Coaching and training. It's because what Jules and I and our coaches have to sell is not as easy to sell to agents as marketing and branding. If I sell to you, and I get it, if I already go, I want to hire a trainer at the gym. I'm going to go interview trainers. And one of the trainers says, Tim, you just got to work out for 10 minutes a day. You got to, do this little, oh, don't worry. You're never going to feel, it's going to be easy. Look, you're going to take some time. You're going to have to do some of this and some of the other thing. But it's going to be fun. Oh, no rejection. You're never going to feel like, getting sick because you worked out too hard.
You won't be sore or anything.
You're never going to sweat too much. It's going to be easy. You can handle it, or I'm going to go to another trainer. He's going to say, bro, with the goal you have set for yourself, it's going to suck. It's going to suck for a long period of time. It's going to take real work. You're going to be sore most days. You're probably not going to feel good after you work out, probably half the time. You're going to have to change the way you eat. You're going to have to change your sleep. You're going to have to, you're going to have to do all these things. Which trainer are most people going to hire? The easy peasy one, the one that's telling the people that they can accomplish the goal without doing the work, the one that's lying to them and telling them that they don't have to do what they don't want to do when they don't want to do it at the highest level. That's not us. We're going to tell you the truth. And we ultimately are going to appeal to far fewer agents, but the agents that we appeal to are the ones that have either come to the business knowing what we were saying was true, ex-military, professionals from other industries, or people that have been climbing that social media marketing and branding mountain and realize what a lie it mostly is. That's and they're going to go, I have been doing this. I've been doing my, videos every day for the last 2 years. I listened to what you said. I dry erase board. I tracked where my transactions came from, and a total of none came from those sources. And now I realize what you guys have been saying. We hear that a ton. That's probably the number one thing we hear from the podcast is I wish it's not that they didn't hear what we had to say years ago. It's just they didn't listen. That's the truth, right?
We're ready to implement just yet. Yeah, there are a lot of examples of that. And that's, there's a lot of fun things that, you can do with videos. It's very creative. There's a lot of great stuff, but to think of that as its own lead generator by itself isn't going to get you the results that you want. It should always be in support of the real work of real estate, right?
What? So, Jules,
Yeah,
repeat
the
that. So,
difference.
Julie just said something that's really important. There's proactive lead generation, which is what we primarily focus on. And then there's passive lead generation, which is what everyone else tells you guys to do. If you choose one, do the proactive lead generation and you can skip the passive lead generation. How do you know what is what? If what you're doing for lead generation, is it putting you in direct contact, not with a lead or a contact, but is it putting you directly in front of someone who wants to ideally sell a home or buy a home? Directly in front of. Like,
Right.
hi, Julie, my name is Tim. I noticed that your home just came off the market and I was curious, are you still interested in getting this home sold? That's an expired. You guys get the point? That's proactive lead generation. That's what we want you focusing on because it's going to put you in a position to help the most people make the most amount of money the quickest. But it does require skill, mental, emotional, and actual skill. But when you get that skill, you'll have that skill forever. Viktor Frankl, if you guys have ever read that book that he wrote about concentration camps, where is this conversation going, right? If you haven't, you actually have it. Man's Search for Meaning, I think is what it's called. You should read that. Because even after everything was taken away from him, the one thing he had was the thoughts in his mind from the education that he had. And that's the thing that's magical that it's true. So if you're building your business based on, like, the old saying is, don't build your mansion on land you do not own, right? Seems, obvious. But how many of you are doing that right now? How many of you, for example, built your businesses based on TikTok, or at least spent a lot of money on TikTok or time on TikTok? Before that, it was Vine. And there'll be other things too, because you built your mansion on land you do not own. When you build your mansion, your future on your skill set and your mindset, the way we frankly teach you guys how to do it, you're going to own the mansion, you're going to own the land, eventually you're going to own the whole damn town. So that's a
Yeah.
huge, I think, it's an enormous difference from the way most, certainly coaches and trainers, but brokers have approached the business for at least probably the last 15 or 16 years.
But it is more work. I mean, you do have
For
to
sure.
accept that fact. And, we together and our coaches, we have lots of coaching clients that love to do the videos. But here's the thing. There's a difference between, like, the example that I always have is, let's say that I'm going to go door knock some expireds, right? I can film myself. I can be like, all right, I'm going to go out into this one zip code. I'm going to just, I'm going to film that. I'm going to door knock around the expireds. I'm going to, try and find somebody who really needs my help because I've already sold all of my other listings. You can make it fun, but it's the backbone of it is the real work, right? That's that versus doing something that has nothing to do with talking to actual buyers or sellers and just saying, hey, I sell real estate in whatever zip code and call me or whatever, or something that's not even related to real estate that you're doing videos on. So you really have to think about who your target market is and what your message actually is. And the way to do that easily is, are you being proactive? Are you talking to somebody that could potentially transact or send you a referral? Because if the answer to that is no, then you are probably wasting your time.
Yep. And that's the bottom line. I mean, are you spending a majority of your time in your lead generation efforts, having conversations with people that will transact with you, and will result in you getting a paycheck within 90 days or less?
Or
If
at
you're
least
doing,
refer somebody to you. I always tell people, they get, sometimes they get frustrated. They've had like 10 calls in a row and it's all people that were like, not ready to do anything. Well, that's still a conversation with a decision-making adult. Before you hang up that phone, you can say, well, I can appreciate that you do have a beautiful house. I don't blame you for not wanting to move ever, but while I've got you, who else do you know who could use my help buying or selling real estate? You can like make that a better contact because you have that live interaction. And you never know. They may, somebody at work or their kid, maybe they've got first time buyer kids that are ready to stop renting. You don't know if you don't ask. That's the difference between being proactive and just kind of wandering around the wilds of real estate, hoping that the lead, knocks you in the head.
I mean, I hope you guys are picking up on Julie's frequency, I sound like a hippie there. Sorry. But what she's really, I'm going to really pour it
Don't
on
worry,
now.
it's not sustainable. You can't
Yeah,
do
it's not for me, right? Well, I mean, but the vibe that she's putting off, she's tuned into a frequency. Huh, there, I slipped another one in. That's going to cause her to constantly be monitoring for real estate conversations, but
Yeah.
also she's always knowing. So like the mindset of being of service to people. It's Frederick Eklund, who we've had on this podcast before, who said something which was really great. He said, I walk outside of my building in Manhattan every day, and I'm blessed because everywhere I look, left, right, up, down, wherever Manhattan, tall buildings, up includes, because people are up there too. Everyone I'm around wants to buy or sell or lease a property. Every single person around me constantly is a prospective client of mine. That is a real amazing thought. And some of you guys will say abundance and scarcity, and that's true, but
But
that's
that's a
incredible.
mindset,
It
right?
is. It's a mindset. But you guys all have the same blessings. You're not in Manhattan, but every single person around you wants to buy or sell real estate. So to believe there's a scarcity of leads, or to believe there's a scarcity of people that you can help, that's not true. And then your belief that it's true, your belief that there's a scarcity of people that want to do transactions, are what results or allows these marketing and branding people to take advantage of that fear by saying the reason that you're not generating more transactions, the reason you don't have more leads is because you're not doing the branding and the marketing and the advertising. Now, in
Or
a
you haven't
normal
done it
business,
long enough.
right? If I were selling pens, okay, pens, then maybe, yeah, marketing and branding and advertising to sell pens, that makes sense. Marketing and branding for a product makes sense. But for a service, especially a service that you already know, like I have to find, if I'm going to market and brand this pen, I have to find people that want to buy a pen and that want to buy this pen. And you're not buying this one because Julie gave it to me for Christmas. It has my initials on it. But remember that one?
Yep.
Yeah, but the moral of the story is, as a real estate practitioner, you are smart enough to get a real estate license, and you're smart enough to sell something that everybody wants. And
Yes.
usually when they want one house, they might want 2 or 3 or 10, right? So you are not lacking for people that are motivated to do business with you. So your main motivation has to be going and having conversations with the people that already have their hands in the air, that are saying, yes, I want to transact. And those are going to be all the things that we teach you in Premier Coaching. We do teach you how to do the passive lead generation, the marketing, the branding, and the advertising, but we want you to do it in the right order. The first order is to focus on proactive lead generation. That's what we were just talking about. And then you do the passive lead generation. You might not ever choose to do the passive lead generation because it takes money and it takes time when you get really good at the proactive lead generation. Julie, let's bounce to the last question, okay?
Sure. I don't
All
know
right.
what it is. Tell me.
I know you don't. Okay, so how to get started. This is a question that came in yesterday after you and I were talking about this, or no, the day before I was talking about this in the podcast. We've been talking a lot about freedom because it's something that I think a lot of people are longing for, that sense of financial freedom primarily, because after that comes all kinds of other levels of freedom, psychological, spiritual, time freedom. So how to get started on my financial exit plan was this question came in a number of different ways. And I want to start by, before Julie answers, she's going to think about it. I can tell she's brewing. We've done a lot of podcasts on this and we've also talked about this a lot in Premier Coaching. So we're only going to give you an overview, but I'll get you started. Okay, Jules?
Mhm.
The number one thing is accepting the fact that everything that you probably long for from all your effort and professional work, what you truly are trying to chase or you truly want to experience is the sense of freedom from having to ever worry about earning money. And I mean, you might be saying to yourself, well, I don't worry about it. I always know I'm going to have money coming in. Well, what if you had enough money coming in where you were rich, basically? And our definition of rich is where your money works for you and you no longer have to work for your money. So what if you have enough money coming in passively, stocks, revenue share from EXP, maybe, different things, but that's coming in from sources that are not dependent on your effort. In other words, if you decided to take 3 months off and go to Europe, you're still getting paid, right? That's a
Non-transaction.
goal. Exactly. It's not linked to any. So if you're thinking, well, I already have that because I have a real estate business that generates money from mortgage and title. Well, when real estate transaction flow falls, so do those other things. So what if you had enough money coming in from sources that were not dependent on the sweat of your brow? That's true financial freedom. And sometimes you don't need millions and millions of dollars to accomplish that, depending on what your goals are. What would that feel like? Can you even allow yourself to emotionally experience that? It's hard, especially, if you were poor, you came from no money. to put yourself in a place where you're no longer having to be in the struggle. It's fascinating how difficult that is. But so I'll tee you off that way, Julie. Acceptance that they can be financially free would be my first suggestion.
That by itself is a huge thing, right? I think coupled with that is really defining what that actually means, because I think that can be an intimidating thought. Being financially free where I'm not dependent on my next deal or my next deals or my deal flow or any of that. And a lot of people think that that's going to take millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars. And I'm so far away from that. How am I ever going to achieve that? Well, I had a coaching client once that, because she had absolutely everything paid off and lived in a fairly inexpensive part of South Carolina, she really only had to for her existing utilities, cell phone bills, et cetera, and a little bit of travel. She had to earn like $4,000 a month. That's it. And for her, that was the definition of freedom. Okay. And she did achieve that through a combination of things. Okay. Now, for some other people, the number is a lot bigger. I had a young kid that was living with mom and dad, and he's like, oh, I only have to earn $800 a month. And I'm like, well, yeah, if you only want to live with mom and dad the rest of your life, or do you want to live in the basement forever? So define what it is, because then you can say, all right, what are 3 or 4 different ways that I can achieve that? Am I going to do that with, maybe it's a combination of EXP rev share plus 2 rentals that are paid off and some S&P 500. Maybe the combination of those things.
What was the last one?
The S&P 500
Oh,
investing.
S&P 500. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
but Julie, let's break it down.
But
Let's see.
what I'm saying is you can't achieve it if you haven't defined it. And if it's still this thing that's like this wild animal out there that you think is unachievable. Your first point, accept the fact that it is possible. And then what would it take is the next question.
So accept the fact that it's possible. Number 2, the killer of financial freedom is always the increasing of the personal burn rate. That's always going to kill it. If you're constantly going from upgrade to upgrade, 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 and you're not in an attach, because you can go from one great house to a greater house. You can go from a Toyota to a Lexus to a, whatever, to whatever. But at the end of the day, unless you're a real car nerd like I am, and Julia sort of, you're not the incremental improvement or the incremental emotional payoff from that added financial thing. It diminishes greatly. It's not like the first time you bought a nice car. It's just nowhere near that. And I'm not saying don't buy a nice car or have nice things. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying be mindful of why you're attracted to buy that more expensive thing, and ask yourself, is buying this thing going to give me more freedom or less freedom? If that is indeed what the goal is, then to make it very practical, the first thing you've got to do after you've accepted those 2 things and had those 2 major thoughts, and you now have accepted the fact that everything you want in life is on the other side of doing what you don't want to do, and you don't want to do it at the highest level, and that everything you want in life is going to take a lot longer than you think. All right. So those are easy things to swallow, right? All right. Next thing is you want to build a business that creates consistent cash flow. That's the number one thing that screws most people up. Ups and downs, or no income at all, or big, huge. I mean, Julie just had somebody had a closing of almost $1 million. Okay. One closing. And you can have these,
not the purchase price.
Yeah. Commission, check to the person, right? So you can have these big, huge swings. Well, that's not consistent cash flow. And that's going to give you stress, because if you're in the downward slope and you're at the bottom emotionally, there's no sense in freedom in that, because you're so sweating the next big check. Commercial agents, you know what I'm talking about. So the first thing is to have consistent cash flow. The second thing is to not allow lifestyle creep or business expense creep to kill your profit margins. Because what a lot of agents do is they make the rationalization, I'm going to just pour all my profit back into my business. I'm just going to reinvest in my business. I'm going to constantly, no, don't do that. Because your business, here's a mindset thing, is not worth anything. You're never going to sell your business. It is there to be an ATM machine that's going to fund your future possibilities. So 3rd, 4th, maybe 5th thing that we'll suggest, I haven't written these down, these are off the top of mind, right? Is going to be discipline yourself, force yourself to save money every single month and pay yourself first. That is so freaking important. And start out by 10%, then increase to 20%, 30%. Pay yourself first. Because, for example, if your personal overhead per month is, 15 grand and your business overhead is, 10 grand, but you've gotten really good at generating 50 grand a month, you've got to start saving 30% of the 50 grand every month before you pay taxes. You have to save, force yourself to save. And then don't say, well, I'm all intimidated by the financial markets. Here, I'm going to make it very easy for you. Read any book by Charlie Munger, read any book by Warren Buffett. Anthony Robbins wrote a great book. All these great books, I'm going to tell you what the conclusion is. S&P 500, Vanguard index funds. That's it. I won't even labor that point any longer. Just go and research it yourself. So once you've gotten to the point where you have a business that creates consistent profit, not revenue, profit, two different things, it's easier to generate money than it is to actually build a profitable business. And then the hardest thing is to not just waste that profitable business on lifestyle creep or on business creep, all these dumb things. And then you want to start forcing yourself to invest that. And I get it. It's not sexy. It's not exciting. You're not going to be an Instagram hero driving around your purple Lamborghini, but you're going to be making yourself rich. And here's the thing. It's very, very fascinating about compounding, compounding wealth is that it starts out really, really painfully, barely noticeably slow, and then it doesn't. And then it just gets freaking huge. Because what happens is, let's say you get to the discipline of, I don't know what it's going to be for you, but let's say 5,000 a month. Let's say 5,000 a month is you can do consistently. You have to treat that $5,000 a month forced savings like if it were your house payment, your car payment, your cell phone payment. Don't treat it as, oh, I'll save money when I have extra money. Nope, you won't do it. It
has to drive you crazy if you don't do it.
Yeah,
it has totally to be like your North Star.
Exactly. Yeah. You have to put everything behind the saving of the money. Yes, you heard. Well, I will just wait to sell my business. I'm going to wait for, no, it won't happen.
Well, and isn't that the agent way? I'll save. It's always the same. It's like when I get both sides of a deal, or when I sell a really big deal, or when I have that third deal a month, when I'm used to doing 2 deals a month. It's always like kicking the can down the road. And so a lot of agents will only save when certain things happen. You've got to make that the thing that's happening. You've got to be like, I'm going to pay myself first. I remember, we didn't always do that. I remember having to learn that. Pay yourself first. And you're right about business expense creep as well, because there's so many people that will say, well, you have to spend money to make money, and you have to invest in your business. Invest in your business first. It's the biggest investment you can make. Well, that's true after investing in yourself.
Well, but I want to be careful on that, because a lot of people that are selling, marketing and advertising, even coaching and training, they'll tell you to spend all your profit on marketing and advertising and coaching and training. And I don't feel comfortable with that, because I think, yes, you're going to get the greatest return on investment ultimately from what happens between your ears. But don't make it an either or, make it a both. So force yourself to save and do the coaching and training and the improving of yourself. And if you have to
do more.
Right. You have to do more, which is like, if you're ever in a situation where you're going to say, well, you purge words like I can't afford it, and don't ever say things like that, because that seats in your brain. But yes, let's get back on track, Julie, just for the sake of helping these guys. Okay. So once you've learned how to consistently generate money, once you're consistently saving money, once you're consistently seeing your compounding wealth build, then what you're going to see is that the money will start here. I'll tell you guys a little fun experiment. Go to Chat GPT. How's your battery, Jules? Go to Chat GPT and then do a little homework assignment. Whatever age you are, right? So let's say you're 35. So starting out at 35, here's what you put in Chat GPT. Starting out at 35, if I invest, $5,000 a month or 3,000 or whatever the number is into the S&P 500, how much money will that be in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years? Ask and just ask that question, and you'll be astonished. And because what's going to happen is other things are going to be happening too. Your house, hopefully you have a home, your house is going to get paid off. And then you're going to wake up one day and you're going to be a millionaire, then a multimillionaire, then a decamillionaire. But it all starts with creating consistent cash flow. Sorry. And then focusing on net profit, and then making sure you're not pissing away the net profit on lifestyle and business creep. Because guys, nobody is going to take care of you. No Social Security, no government, no rich uncle. Elon Musk is not your friend. You're not going to find gold in your backyard. None of those things are going to happen. If you ever want to be free, which is what most of you want, be financially free, hopefully all these points are kind of clicking in your mind. You're going to have to be the one that owns your future. And you're going to have to, original point, accept the fact or maybe come to the conclusion or maybe toss it around that what you truly want is you want to be free, financially free. And then if you keep your overhead reasonable, you can accomplish that goal a lot faster than you think. So go ahead, Jules.
Well, I think it is important to use ChatGPT, for example, to spin that out and do your own experimentation. Because if you don't, it's always going to be like this question that you haven't really defined in your mind. I need to invest. It's like when somebody says, I want to lose weight. Well, nobody's ever really said, I want to gain weight, maybe muscle, I suppose. But it's okay, by how much and by when and how are you going to do it? So I would need to save more money. I want to have passive income. Okay, well, how much and what are the different ways you can get there? How many years are you going to count on? How much? So, and do some comparisons, like what's the difference between investing 5,000 a month consistently versus 6,000 a month, consistently? What would it take? I do this sometimes with coaching clients. They're like, should I pay off my mortgage? Shouldn't I pay off my mortgage? Well, what if you did an extra $1,000 towards your mortgage over this many years? What kind of impact does that do? You need to know the math behind it. And I know, most people were not brought up with a lot of financial coaching, shall we say. You don't get that in school. If you're lucky, your parents gave that to you. But now we all have AI and we can just ask it, what happens if I do this? What happens if I do that? And spin it out. And then that becomes some goal setting. And maybe some of you, 5,000 a month is just like something unimaginable right now. Well, what if you did $500 a month for the next 12 months? And then you did $750 a month for the next 6 months, and you incrementally, because you're getting used to doing that. What does that do to your projections? You've got to really utilize that and get clear on it. And I think too many people just kind of hide out from their financial goals.
They do. And, we talked about on the podcast yesterday, we talked about the importance of having like Monarch Money as your daily check-in thing, a daily accountability thing for yourself. But you and I did a podcast probably 2 years ago. I think we repeated it once. And the essence of the podcast, and Jules, you ought to write this one down because it was a good one. Find the notes. Is that nobody wants you to be rich. Nobody
Not even
wants
your
you to,
mama.
not even your mama. That's what it was
Yeah,
called.
I
So you
remember.
guys should search that. Nobody wants you to be rich, not even your mama. It's because, and it's fascinating if you think about that, nobody does want you to be rich. Everybody wants you to be dependent. The government wants you to be dependent. Employers want you to be dependent. Your city wants you to be dependent. Your society wants you to be dependent. Because if you're rich, and rich is merely where your money works for you, you no longer have to work for your money. If you have enough money coming in every single month that you never have to think about money again, I want you to ask this question. This is a good place to level off if you're cool, Jules. Is what wouldn't change in your life if you had enough money coming in passively, which you can create in your lifetime? Like virtually every millionaire is in America. They did not inherit it. They created it themselves, first generation, and mostly from their own principal residence, real estate. And then they get into things like stocks and into things like what we talked about, the S&P 500. But if you had enough money coming in passively every month, let's say you have to earn $10,000 a month, you have $15,000 coming in a month, mailbox money. What wouldn't change in your life? Starting internally. Maybe that's the hardest way to be, being introspective is definitely not easy for many of us. But what wouldn't change? Would you live in the same house? Maybe you would. Would you have the same thoughts? Probably not. Would you vote for the same people? Would you,
Maybe you sleep better at night.
would you read the same things? Would you drink as much? If you had enough money coming in passively, you never had to worry about money. Here's an interesting thought. Would you get in better shape? That's weird, right? Well, you would. And statistically, that's what happens because the wealthier people become, the more they focus on their physicality because they are no longer
They want
worried
to
about
live.
money.
They want to enjoy their life.
Exactly. So it's really, really interesting and counterintuitive, especially if you were raised as a middle-class person or lower. It's really interesting to think about money in terms of really, truly what it is. It's the ultimate get out of, it's the freedom machine is really what it is. So if you had enough money coming in passively, dear listener or viewer, what wouldn't change in your life? Everything would change, wouldn't it? Everything would change for the better. You'd become a better better person. You wouldn't be, your energy, like it's so easy to fall into the trap of having antivirus software right on your brain 24/7 when you're not financially independent because you're always wondering about money. And it might not be 60, 90-day money. It might be 4 months from now money. But once you've broken free of that, and it doesn't happen overnight and it does take work, that's the greatest gift you can give to yourself and your loved ones and the future generations that are yet to come, that will sing your praises. And I do have to turn off, Julie, because my battery light just came on. I bet yours did too. So in the meantime, guys, this is our Freeform Friday podcast, not our normal fare. And if you'd like to give us some ideas for future Friday shows or any podcasts in general, message us on Instagram at Tim and Julie Harris. And that's the best way. And we love the ideas. If it's a personal question or something that wouldn't be appropriate for wide scale public consumption, don't worry, we'll still answer. It will help you in any way that we can, or certainly one of our coaches will. In the meantime, thank you for keeping this the number one listen to daily podcast for real estate practitioners in at least the United States. Obviously, do the liking and the subscribing and the rest of it. And please do share this podcast with somebody else you think it might help. You guys have a fantastic day. We'll talk with you on the podcast anytime because there's thousands of past shows, or certainly we'll talk with you on a live show tomorrow. Bye.